are tuned to WMNF Radio 88.5 FM in Tampa. This is your public affairs program called Community Speaks, and I'm your host, Patro Mabili. And of course, we're here to talk to you about what's happening in the world today, taking your telephone calls and your emails. You can also listen online, WMNF.org. Poetry on Sustainable Living show last week, and at the start of the show today, last hour, was great. And you may have some poetry about the news. If so, call me. Hurricane season is here with the first named storm of the season, Debbie. We are always concerned about price gouging, but it is an open question if the general inflation is rooted in corporate greed, a cartel-like price-fixing scheme in which business, especially grocery stores, meet to agree on elevated prices, which is illegal, but it happens. And also, the numbers are in regarding how much immigrants pay in taxes. And also, last week we started talking about the efforts around the candidacy of Vice President Kamala Harris to be the nominee for the Democratic nominee for President of the United States. She launches a campaign to win over GOP voters. The United States and allies prepare to defend Israel from an expected Iranian counterstrike, and forecasters warn that heavy rain from Hurricane Debbie could spawn catastrophic flooding. So there's a lot to talk to you about, and of course there's always those old issues that we have been discussing. We know about Project 2025. We're not talking enough about that. Russell Voigt was the chief architect of Project 2025, and of course, that is led by the Heritage Foundation, a conservative think tank. Project 2025 is a detailed 920-page handbook for governing under the next Republican administration, a whirlwind of hard-right ambitions. Its proposals range from ousting thousands of civil servants and replacing them with Trump loyalists, to reversing the Food and Drug Administration's approval of medications and used in abortions. And Democrats for months have been using Project 2025 to hammer Trump and other Republicans, arguing to voters that it represents the former president's true and extreme agenda. So we're gonna, if you want, talk a little deeper into some of that, and maybe halfway through the show we'll get a weather update of what is happening. We see that the Hurricane Debbie has made landfall somewhere in North Florida, following the same path, it seemed like, of Idalia last year, and we're gonna take a look at maybe some flooding issues and how to go about that. But as we were talking about the Harris campaign, and as I said, I dipped into a conversation last week about among black men who have been organizing, and we've been hearing some interesting comments from black men, but also from some white men who are Democrats that are saying some interesting things, like maybe one of the comments that were made by the person who headed up Barack Obama's campaign. He's saying that the excitement around Kamala Harris is irrational exuberance. So that's an interesting comment coming from a fellow Democrat, but maybe he can explain himself. But of course, there's a lot on the table right now, plus that some of the culture war issues that are continuing to plague this nation. As we're seeing in England, there's a right-wing uprising against the killing of, reaction to the killing of children at a party, but because the killer was believed, because through misinformation on social media, that he was an immigrant, the uprising, the violence, right-wing violence has broken out. And one of the disgusting parts of the culture wars is this violence, just based on misinformation. And we talk a little bit about Dwayne Wade, who used to live here in Florida because he played for an NBA team, the Miami Heat, has moved because his daughter, his transgender daughter, is receiving a lot of death threats we saw at the Olympics opening ceremony, because Christians got upset over what they believed was a bastardization of the Last Supper, which it was not. The death threats have started against the DJs behind that particular portion of the opening ceremony. But Dwayne Wade's transgender daughter threw out the first pitch at a Chicago baseball game, and on social media, a bunch of disgusting comments directed at Dwayne Wade's daughter. So on social media, no matter where you move, the disinformation and the hatred continues. Several fans for baseball, Chicago Cubs mocked Wade's daughter from just the way she walked. But it's good in terms of watching fatherhood at work. This man supports his daughter, despite what he may have believed beforehand. When his daughter made this decision to transition, he supported her. And the state of Florida did not support medical rights to the transgender. They have been trying hard to fashion new laws against him, forcing him to move out of this state. But the hatred is continuing politically because there's so much of this culture war that is being embraced by those on the right, and they don't want to give it up. I guess they're just having too much fun at other people's expense. But it's an important thing to continue to talk about because people's lives are in danger in the process, and we have to be vigilant. But we'll start off with the comments are from a poller who joined into the discussion around Harris's campaign, and some of what I was just talking about with Dwayne Wade is mentioned because it is important how you speak in terms of pollsters, how you speak to black men in this political season to try to get an understanding of what they see is important in this upcoming election. And there is a lot of excitement. I wouldn't call it irrational, but there is exuberance around the Harris campaign, given the alternative and Project 2025 and all this culture war violence that is constantly simmering just beneath the surface. We're going to pick up where I should have gone last week and played this part where Terry Woodbury joined the discussion with black men who have been on the podcast ever since the announcement by President Joe Biden that he was stepping aside and that he was endorsing his vice president, Kamala Harris, for president, for the nomination, for the Democratic nomination. The convention is coming up, but there have been a lot of people who have been joining this podcast. Win with Black Women is one, but Win with Black Men is also another that has been designed to sow excitement and support for a Harris candidacy. But how you talk to people in terms of polling data is important. And so Terry Woodbury, who owns his own polling firm, is speaking here. The Win with Black Men podcast has been organized by journalist Rowan Martin, and just after he introduced Terry Woodbury, he goes into greater discussion about how he talks about the polling strategy, and he joined in this podcast. And the excitement built around the Harris candidacy has created interesting bedfellows politically. As I said, those who are in the Republican Party are beginning to respond to Harris trying to organize Republicans for her campaign or to vote for her. But as I said, we'll listen to what Terry Woodbury is saying as he tries to make sense of what people are feeling, especially black men are feeling in this moment politically, especially given the alternative. Here is Terry Woodbury.
Thank you so much, Roland. Thank all of you gentlemen for being here. I started this company to make sure that we are lifting up the voices that are underrepresented and misrepresented in research. And I can assure you that no one is more misrepresented in polling right now than Black men. And so we've been keeping our finger on the pulse. We work with organizations like NAACP, Black Lives Matter, Collective, PAC, Black Men Vote, Higher Heights, in order to keep our finger on the pulse. We're in focus groups almost every night, y'all. And so I don't come to tell you my opinion. I come to tell you the opinion of the Black folks that we talk to every day. Look, with the support of Brother Quentin, we do have a poll, a new poll from of the vice president post her becoming the nominee. Quentin also just got back from vacation, so we got to talk about how we're gonna get that data out into the public. But for now, I want to show y'all a couple of slides. I just want to arm y'all with data. We all got work to do, right? But I want to make
sure. The first thing you're gonna do is come on the Black Star Network so we know what you're gonna do first. So go right ahead.
That's what we can premiere that poll over there, Quentin, when you're ready. All right, y'all. Let me just walk you through a couple of points real quick. I got 5 minutes. Number one, the vice president is not going to inherit Joe Biden's coalition. She's going to have to build her own. Joe Biden became president with a lot of blocks of voters that not all Democrats do well with. Groups like white seniors. All Democrats do well with Black seniors. I always say I love Black seniors because we know they're going to vote and we know who they're going to vote for. Well, Joe Biden did exceptionally well amongst white seniors, who are the largest voting bloc in America. Something tells me that Kamala Harris is not going to do better than Scranton Joe with Black seniors. With white seniors. And so she's going to have to consolidate her base of Black voters, of young voters, and of POC women and of women of color.
Terrence.
Yep.
But I want you to explain that one there. And first of all, Democrats have not done well with white voters since the LBJ in 1964. Biden did the best among white voters, correct me, of any Democrat for really 30 plus years. Was it 42% of white voters who received?
That's exactly right. 42, 50,
Hillary Clinton,
I think. Yep.
Hillary Clinton was around 38. So the reality is that it's critically important for Vice President Kamala Harris to get around 40% of white voters, correct, and to have a dramatic increase of Black, Latino, and young voters, right?
That's exactly right. So Barack Obama's coalition included a lot more voters of color, not just a larger share of them, but there were more of them voting because they were mobilized by Barack Obama. When Joe Biden got elected, he did much better than Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton with groups like white seniors, like white women, like white college voters. Some of those groups Kamala Harris is going to do well with. I expect her to do well with white women. But some of those groups she's not going to do as well with, like white seniors. She's not going to do as well as Scranton Joe does with white seniors, and they're the largest voting bloc in America. President Biden also got 79% of Black men's votes, y'all. Kamala Harris ain't going to win with 79% of Black men's votes. She's going to have to get closer to 90%. She's going to get close to that Obama level number. The reason he was able to win with 79 is because of how well he was doing with the groups that we know she's not going to be able to perform as well with, like white seniors. All right, number two, pervasive misinformation and disinformation have done damage to her credibility amongst the exact groups that she needs to win: Black people, young people, and women of color. These stereotypes that she's not Black enough, that she's not woman enough because she don't have kids. I hear all of this shit in focus groups. And the thing that we hear the most is that she locked up a bunch of Black folks. So what do we have to do? We have to redefine her before we allow them to define her. That starts with layering in her bio. It doesn't start with her resume, right? It doesn't start with how many offices she's won and how many glass ceilings she's shattered. That's important. But for Black men, we got to know who she is. Who's your mama? You know, where you from? What do you believe in? Do you go to church? Do you pray? We need the basics. And then we can get to correcting the record. And then we can be, to Quentin's point, and then we can start crystallizing her vision for the future. And then most important, we have to define the existential threat of this election. Another correction I want to make, folks, the threat here is not racism. Black men know that Donald Trump is racist. They know that politics is racist, that it's kind of built in. And so we can't expect that, like, if we can just raise disqualifying the violence, the clear and present danger that he's putting our community in, that is what is disqualifying.
And Terrence.
The fund project 2025.
You're listening to Rowan Martin conduct a podcast with Wayne with Black Men, and we're listening to Terry Woodbury talk about the polling data and how to approach polling, especially among Black men. So this is part of the point of this part of the podcast.
This ain't anecdotal stuff.
You're tuning to Community Speaks here on WMNF Tampa.
What you're hearing and why you're telling us this, because you're hearing this directly from the mouths of individuals who are considering voting for Trump, who might be Democrats or independents, who may be on the couch. Just explain that for the people who don't quite understand.
Yeah, that's exactly right, Roland. And so we are a public opinion firm. We're not a polling firm, right? And so we keep our finger on the public opinion of our communities. That includes polling, but that also includes sitting in focus groups almost every single night. We conduct over 20 focus groups a month. That's almost every night, folks. I'm in Philadelphia last week. I'm going to Detroit next week. I'm in a battleground state at least once a week because we are listening to the voters that are going to determine the outcome of this election. And one of the things that we're hearing the most is number 3. In fact, I was in focus groups on Tuesday, 48 hours after she was nominated, and I heard number 3 more than I'm hearing anything else. And that is Black folks are not underestimating the America's proclivity for racism, right? And what does that mean? In these focus groups, when I asked them about how do you feel about Kamala Harris being nominated? Do you think she can win? The main concern that people have is not that they don't like her. It's that white folks might not vote for her. It's that what happens if white people don't vote for her and then he gets elected, right? For Black people, the number one priority in this election is beating Donald Trump. And so what happens if America's racism and sexism prevents this woman from getting elected? They are terrified by that. And if you remember, it was the same thing they felt about Barack Obama in 2008, y'all. Barack Obama wasn't winning South Carolina. Hillary Clinton was winning South Carolina until Barack Obama won Iowa in 2008 because Black folks needed to know that white people would vote for him.
That's right.
We needed to know that. Before we bet on him, we needed to know because we're not just voting for ourselves. We're practical voters. We're voting to defend our communities. And right now, we're defending it against that existential threat of violence. And can she beat him? So what do we need to do to convince Black folks that she could win this thing? We have to demonstrate momentum, remind them of our collective power. This grassroots energy, this is how we convince them. The grassroots, the grass tops energy is going to convince the grassroots. The second thing, though, is that we got to remind them that we've overcome sexism and racism before. We did it for Barack Obama. It's our collective power. Together, we can do this. And finally, and this is going to be a big part of this, y'all, is mega star power. When she's standing on stage with Barack Obama and Meryl Streep and Will Smith, and on Tuesday, she's going to be in Atlanta performing with Meg Thee Stallion. That's how she does it, y'all. That's how the people start to see the collective power around her. And that's how they believe that we can beat this racism and beat this sexism. And finally, look, Black men, a lot of the very progressive social issues aren't very mobilizing to us, like marriage equality and immigration, and some of those things aren't the issues that we're it's not that we're against all of those things. It's that those aren't the reasons we're about to get up and go vote, right? With the exception of abortion. Abortion is the one social issue that, listen, y'all, Black men are supporting abortion in some places at higher rates than women. That's not just based on their opinion, that's based on their votes. In Ohio, issue 1 in 2023, issue 1 was an abortion amendment in 2023 in Ohio. Black men supported issue 1 more than any group in the state of Ohio, including Black women. 87% of Black men voted yes on issue 1. And so abortion is very mobilizing for Black men. But the other thing we got to do with these progressive issues, I'm not telling Democrats and progressives to abandon progressive issues. I'm saying we got to package these progressive issues and message them through Black values. Values like spirituality, patriotism, masculinity. Listen, I had a brother tell me in a focus group just last week in Philadelphia that when he sees an American flag hanging on somebody's house, that means they're white and they're racist. Mm-hmm. We can't seed racism. We can't seed patriotism, y'all. We can't seed Jesus. We can't seed these things to the right. And the most important thing I've been trying to tell Democrats all the time is like, not all masculinity is toxic. We can't cede masculinity to the right, or you're going to cede my father. If you cede God, and you cede patriotism, and you cede masculinity, there's no place for him in this party. So what does that mean? It means we message these progressive values like abortion through a religious value. God grants us all freedom of choice. Why should government grant women any less than that? That is a religious value for a progressive issue. As the head of my household, I must protect my family from intrusive governments that tell them who they can and cannot be. That is a masculine value for a progressive issue. In fact, that last bullet point is exactly what we see Dwayne Wade doing every single day for his daughter. As the head of his household, he stands up for his trans daughter because that's his responsibility as a father, right? These are the ways that we use our values to message these progressive issues. All right, John, let me give you a couple of slides real quick. First things first, this is a poll that was taken the day after she became the nominee. I told you she's not going to inherit Joe Biden's coalition.
Well, we have been listening to Terry Woodbury on a podcast, Win with Black Men, trying to figure out how to talk about these issues in this election. And of course, there are some local issues. There's some issues that are economic in nature that we have to look into. And of course, there are the geopolitical issues. And right now, as we look at the hurricane situation here in Florida, we're concerned about Florida's price gouging law only applying in certain circumstances. And how do we protect ourselves from price gouging? Because this is something we deal with every year. 813-239-9663. If you want to join me in discussion here on Community Speaks, and we're going to go straight away to the telephone lines. And we're also going to have an update on the hurricane. So keep it tuned and let's have a discussion about all of these issues. Let's go with Daryl in Tampa first. Go ahead, Daryl. You say what?
Hey, my Billy, how you doing?
Pretty good.
I'm not going to get out in the woods, in the weeds, per se, about this election. Remember, folk, for all these folk who want to vote for Donald Trump, 103 million, that's with an M, million Americans died from COVID because this gentleman did not handle it right as our president. Okay, not Ebola. Not any of the other diseases, because the other presidents, they did their job. But this one was just, it'll go away, or take bleach, or maybe sit under a sun lamp. But when he became infected, what did he do? Run on Marine Force One, left his wife behind in the White House and his special needs child, and went there and took some kind of medicine for a disease that he said is not going to be much. It'll probably just go away. No. You want to put that back in the White House? And I'm going to say this. I do not believe these polls. I think these polls are tainted. I think they are. Why would they be tied with Kamala Harris for a gentleman who caused the death of 103 million Americans to die? How many people died in Vietnam? How many soldiers? And we have a memorial for them. For a war, for a lot of people still talking about, why were we there in Southeast Asia and they couldn't even find it on a map? We knew where Korea was. Why are we dying? And remember, the Civil Rights March started after a lot of young whites were saying, why should I answer my draft card and just go? It's not that I'm anti my country, but why? I'm just asking the question, why should I go? And this gentleman didn't go. His daddy had a doctor to lie for him saying he had bone spurs.
Yeah.
That's why he couldn't go. But he can go on a golf course every day now.
Yeah, it wasn't conscientious objection. It was just an excuse.
Yeah. But I don't want us to get out in the weeds. That's why I called back on another show. I'm not going to mention the name, and saying, listen, Kamala, her name is Kamala.
Right.
Not Camilla, not Camila, whatever. And yeah, I know that she's part Indian, part Asian, and she's black. I have family that go to Bethune-Cookman College. I have some that went to FAMU. Okay, I understand that. Okay, folk, 103. I wonder who all these people are in his rallies are cheering for him. Y'all didn't have a grandmama, a daddy, a mama, a cousin, a brother, a sister who wasn't infected, who died, but you want to put that back in the White House. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, who's shown not have any interest in the job, really. It's just he wants to protect himself and be propped up.
Preach. Go ahead and but you want others to call in, and I'm finna shut up now.
Well,
I'm going to get off the air.
You make an interesting point about polls, and that's why Terry Woodbury made a point of saying he's not just a polling firm. He is also focus group oriented, and he wants people's opinions. He wants people's deep opinions, and I think a lot of people, you're right, lie to pollsters.
Deep opinion, Billy? I've been here all my life in the city of Tampa. I've been called before for Barack Obama and for Bill Clinton and for George Bush Jr. And ain't nobody called me using some bad English. Nobody has called me and asked my opinion. Who would I vote for?
About Kamala,
for this presidential election.
Yeah.
Let me let you go. Okay, bye-bye, my Billy.
Bye. Thank you for calling, Daryl. Always a pleasure. 813-239-9663 is the number to call if you want to chime in on anything that has been raised. It's interesting, a study, because immigration is always one of those wedge issues that the right wing likes to dredge up based on disinformation. They're still calling the southern border an invasion, even though it's been pulled back to a trickle in terms of people trying to get here, because Mexico has now started to stop people who pass through Mexico from going on to the northern border. But a new study shows that undocumented immigrants paid nearly $100 billion in federal, state, and local tax revenues in 2022, while many are shut out of the programs that their taxes fund. The findings run counter to anti-immigrant rhetoric that undocumented immigrants are destroying, quote-unquote, social programs. In 40 states, undocumented immigrants paid higher tax rates than the top 1% of the income scale in those states, according to a study released Tuesday from the Institute on Taxation and Economic Policy, which is a left-leaning nonprofit think tank. But the study, which uses estimates of undocumented immigrants' tax contributions as of 2022, shows those totaled $96.7 billion that year in 2022. And study authors also found that undocumented immigrants would contribute $40.2 billion more per year in federal, state, and local taxes if all of the undocumented population had access to work authorization. The Institute on Taxation and Economic Policy reasoned that this boost would come from higher wages associated with unemployment authorization and easier compliance with income tax laws. So it's a total lie to say they don't contribute to this economy, that they just take. No, they're giving to this economy and cannot take. So 813-239-9663 is the number to call. But let's see if we have some updates here on on the weather here.
Yes. Hello. How are you?
Hi.
So, yes, my name is Megan Bowman with the WMNF News. I'm bringing you an update on Tropical Storm Debbie. It made landfall as a hurricane at about 7 a.m. today near Steinhatchee, with maximum sustained winds of 80 miles per hour, bringing the rural Big Bend region its second hurricane in less than a year. Debbie is expected to slow and turn northeast, meandering across North Florida and southeast Georgia later today. Governor Ron DeSantis says it could produce catastrophic flooding in some locations.
Particularly in north central Florida, you're going to have the potential for some significant flooding. That creates hazards, that creates risk. So please take care of yourself.
Debbie, potentially a historic rainmaker, started pounding the Gulf Coast yesterday, and more than 150,000 utility customers were without power this morning. Currently, TECO is reporting over 7,000 outages, Duke about 55,000 in the Tampa Bay region and Central Florida, and Florida Power and Light shows over 13,000 outages in Sarasota and Manatee counties. A storm surge warning is in effect for the Florida coast from the middle of Longboat Key northward to the Ocklawahnee River. The National Hurricane Center's Storm Surge Unit says the Gulf Coast, including the Tampa Bay area, will remain under a storm surge warning through this afternoon. A tropical storm warning is in effect for the Florida coast from Indian Pass to the middle of Longboat Key in Sarasota, along with the inland portions of Citrus, Hernando, Hillsborough, Manatee, and Pasco counties. A flood watch in Tampa, Apollo Beach, and West Chase will continue until 8 o'clock tonight. Michael Brennan is the National Hurricane Center director.
We have a tornado watch in effect, including areas like Tampa, Orlando, up through Jacksonville, all the way up through the Georgia coast. There will be the potential for tornadoes to develop in those outer rain bands.
The Tampa Bay Tornado Watch is in effect until 4 o'clock today. Forecast winds are 20 to 30 miles per hour with gusts up to 45 miles per hour. There's a potential for 2 to 4 feet of storm surge within prone areas. And preliminary rainfall reports from the National Weather Service show Lakewood Ranch received over 16 inches of rain since Saturday. Sarasota has gotten over 12 inches. Ocala nearly 8 inches, in Tampa, nearly 6 inches. In Manatee County, widespread flooding has been reported, according to a press release. Nearly 12 inches of rain was reported at the SRQ Airport weather station, and over 14 inches was reported in the southwest part of the county. There are currently 2 shelters open, Miller Elementary School and Nolan Middle School. In Pinellas, Fort DeSoto, Fred Howard, and Sand Key parks are closed today due to flooding and anticipated high tides, and the next high tide is around 2:51 this afternoon. You can visit WMNF.org for updates on the storm and road closures throughout the Tampa Bay region. For WMNF News, I'm Megan Bowman.
Thank you, Megan. That was excellent information we needed to know. That information, what's going on and what to look forward to. So thank you very much. The flooding was catastrophic last time. I'm sure it's going to be catastrophic this time. So get those sandbags, get yourself prepared up there. And maybe we need to figure out a way to get some people organized to go help up there in North Florida. The governor has called a state of emergency. But I don't know how much that means since, this governor is very reluctant to take federal funds, especially at critical times like this. And, also we were talking about the response to COVID, the other emergency we saw. And a lot of the times what we saw would, especially in New York, the Democratic governor was busy giving updates every day pre-vaccine, but we saw Republican governors trying to turn it into a national political issue to run on, and they were all over the place. And even to this day, our Surgeon General here in Florida is discouraging people from vaccines, which stem the tide of death in this country. after the vaccines were delivered. And so you got to wonder, if a Republican president in office, would he have paid to deliver those vaccines for free throughout this country? And, the value systems, they've shown themselves to be just different, almost anti-human at times, especially if those humans are not in line with their politics. And they seem to make it up as they go along. Very dangerous time to be trying to make things up in a pandemic. But hurricanes also are important. You have to be on top of your game. And sometimes you have to give up your politics and take that money from the federal government if it's being offered. Well, as we've been looking forward to this election season going on, a lot of people have always, wondered about whether or not they're going to proffer a protest vote, including in this convention. But we're seeing the war effort between Israel and Hamas continue to threaten to spread. Hezbollah says it launched a drone attack on northern Israel. These Lebanese groups, Hezbollah says it launched this drone attack early today on northern Israel that the Israeli military said wounded 2 Israeli troops. But this violence comes amid fears of an all-out regional war following the killings last week of a senior Hezbollah commander in Lebanon and Hamas's top political leader in Iran. The attack did not appear to be the more intense retaliation that's expected from Iran and its allied militias. And the head of Iran's military revolutionary guard has threatened Israel over the assassination of the Hamas leader, warning that Israel was digging his own grave with his actions. But what is not widely reported, even by the Associated Press, is the Hezbollah or the Houthis in the weapons that Russia is providing to the Houthis, and we also wonder their engagement in this is going to cause a widening of that conflict, and that's the last thing this world needs. 813-239-9663. Let's see what you have to say about all of these events and issues going on in the world. We'll go to Tom in Tarpon Springs. Go ahead, Tom. Thank you for calling. You're on the air.
Yes. Hey, good morning. Great show. And, of course, WMNF's a great station. I'll make it kind of brief because I want to give everybody a chance to get on a call today. But last week I joined a group called White Dudes for Harris. And it was a very interesting launch call. There were over 100,000 people on the call. Lots of very interesting information. And one of the things that I got out of it was the fact that if you can sway a couple of percent, 2% of white people to basically get off the fence, and if they're undecided, vote for Harris, or to listen to Einstein's famous saying, which was doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results, is the definition of insanity. Mm-hmm. So to my Republican friends that are used to pulling a lever because they're a Republican and they think that's what they should do, I ask them to think very seriously this time before doing that. They may have voted for Trump when he ran for president and won. But after that, if they voted for him a second time, they might want to reconsider that based on what he did. But, 2 strikes, I can get that. A third strike, you're out. Mm-hmm. This would be the third strike. So I really encourage everybody out there to engage in conversation. And it's not an easy conversation with some of the opponents out there and what they've been told. But we have to get through the lies and the disinformation and get down to the core facts. And I know what I'm going to do, and I encourage everybody to vote for Harris.
All right. Well, thank you, Tom, for that vote of confidence. Thank you for calling in to Community Speaks as we talk to one another about all of these issues. Go ahead, Jeanette. You're on the air from Gulfport. You say what?
Well, of course, I shouldn't say of course, but I am voting for Harris, and because I'm a woman and I believe that our rights are going to be totally flounced upon if Trump gets elected. And not only, because, I mean, our rights are already being,
Yeah, right.
taken away. But the other thing I wanted to say is that I always feel like, I mean, I'm very, very liberal, and I feel like, racism should be abolished, period. And, I grew up, being very, very aware of racism and not, wanting to. And now I live in Florida, and I'm like, why am I living around all these racists? It really, it really drives me nuts, I can't believe. But I do want to ask you a question because I'm assuming you're black, right?
Yes, I am.
And I don't understand why so many black men are in the audience when we are watching Trump make speeches. I don't understand why he's getting any black support from any men.
Mm-hmm.
Because just like that guy who was on the podcast was saying, black men understand this is a racial, election. There's racism in this election. Like, how is he getting the black vote? I don't understand it.
Well, I don't think he really is. I think they are a minuscule part, and I think they also might be responding to the culture wars. I mean, this male toxicity and the anti-LGBTQ fervor that they've been pushing does get some converts.
They eliminate the whole thing about racism in favor of getting rid of all the,
responding
gay people or whatever it is that they're against. But the racism is the number one thing. I mean,
you would think so, and but a lot of
I feel really frustrated sometimes because I'm like, well, we're blaming all the white people for voting for Trump, but there are some black people that because of Tim Scott and because of other,
And I really don't think that those people who show up at the rallies are actually voting. I think some of them are AstroTurf. They're paid to be there.
I was thinking that too. That's true.
Yeah.
But they're still. I mean, I live in St. Pete area, and there are plenty of people that I talk to that are for Trump that are racial, that are not white, they say, or or a different race. And I just but he is a racist. Why would you vote for a racist?
Yeah, I hear it even among some personal friends, but a lot of times it doesn't make sense.
Are you getting frustrated with them?
No, because I don't find a lot of what their logic is they're just not logical. I have one who says that they always vote Republican because Republicans want you to make money.
It's about money. Yes, it's always about money.
Yeah, so I mean it's
about
simplicity.
Greed, it's about money. It's not about people.
Right, and they're not really thinking deeply about it.
Yeah, the history of people in America that are from other racial backgrounds.
Yeah, well, they like to make this coalition. They try to say there's no difference between the two parties. So
who says that?
A lot of people say that. Despite what we've seen and before our very eyes, we've never seen a violent. After the elections, violence after an election because they couldn't accept the results.
Of course. I mean, this is a coup. And I just don't get that anybody in their right mind votes for Trump, period. And if they're listening to me right now saying this, I stand by what I say. You're not in your right mind if you vote for Trump.
All right. Well, thank you for telling it loud and clear, Jeanette.
All righty.
Bye-bye. Thanks for calling. And we'll go see what Art says. And Largo, go ahead. Art, you say what?
Yes, a great show, my Bailey. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
I'd like to agree with Darryl, who doesn't trust pollsters.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't make sense to me to see that Kamala is just leading by 1 percentage point. I just don't believe that when so many more Democrats are in registering. Anyway, I would like to propose that each pollster inform us of the number of people polled. You know, they never do that. They can get away with polling 300, 400 people. Why? We are 335 million people.
Right.
It doesn't make sense to poll even 1,000. But they never, ever give the numbers. And I think it should be mandatory. I don't know who would force them, but I think it should be mandatory.
Yeah, it would help. It would help give us some clarity.
Well, yeah, I agree. And I'd like to make a comment about Israel and Iran very briefly. What we witnessed recently was Israel, assassinating a leader of Hamas and a leader of Hezbollah, and then they come running back to the United States to say, "Oh, we need help." In other words, they can never fight their own battles, never ever. It's like a little boy running to Mama after he punched somebody and said, "Mama, come over and help me because he wants to hurt me."
Mm-hmm.
Isn't that the attitude that Israel has been taking for many years?
I mean, safe and sound under the idea that someone is going to come to the rescue. Yeah.
That's right. That's right. Well, anyway, thank you for a great show, and have a good week.
Thank you. You too, Art. Thank you for calling.
You're welcome.
813-239-9663. Let's see what our friend Simon has to say in Lakeland. Go ahead, Simon. You say what?
Hey, how you doing? First of all, to Art, that wasn't the issue in 1948, 67, or 73. And the reason that the United States is getting involved, if you will, by sending 12 warships over that is Iran controls the Straits of Hormuz, where 20% of the oil travels through. That's why. And as anyone who looked at the stock market from yesterday to today understands that. So, Art, you need to educate yourself a little bit on history. As far as, I didn't know that going to an HBCU school makes you black. Just because you go to an HBCU school, you're black. As far as...
you're black because of your blood, your parentage.
No, but they're white individuals who go to HBCU.
That's true.
Well,
that is
they're
true.
not black. Okay. But I wanted to get to a
Doesn't
couple
that
other
make
issues
you
real
black?
quick. As far as COVID deaths, it's been reported. The New York Times wrote a report that the amount of deaths that were numbered was inflated by 30%, distinguishing between dying from COVID or dying with COVID. And even with those numbers, Joe Biden had almost twice the number of deaths under his administration with COVID than Donald Trump did. And also in
I don't understand that, Simon. I really don't understand it, but you could explain it some other days, not today. 813-239-9663. Ray from Lakeland, you want to chime in and say what?
How you doing?
Good.
Sir. I was listening to the woman asking earlier about, how black people can support Trump. And for that, I want to say hello to everybody in the airwaves, and I want to just give some perspective real quick. The same way a woman doesn't have to explain why or how she thinks a certain way or feels a certain way, minorities, or whether you're a minority or not, people don't have to explain their culture to compare with their personal decisions. We all have to live through life in this America, and you might be a brother as dark-skinned as I am, but we have two completely different life experiences, and so we make different decisions when in times of crisis or, when it really matters.
It's not about explaining, but she wants to know, or she was just couldn't understand it, but what is hard to understand is why people vote against their own interest.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. But if you're going to expect my interest to be as such because of the color of my skin, I'm going to take offense just as much as you saying, well, you must like Kool-Aid.
No, I mean, but there are a lot of white people who are voting against their own interests when they vote for somebody like after he says and did what he said and done, especially on the economy.
Yes, sir. But if your parent were a voting age and you were not, and you had an interest in an interracial relationship, and they had an interest in keeping Jim Crow and keeping segregation, you wouldn't be voting against your own interests, but your parents would believe that you were. And that's the point I'm making right now, is that every individual has a life that they live. And I personally, and this is perspective for us all listening and in this conversation, I don't feel that it's fair to put me in a box, or anyone else for that matter, because of their complexion.
Okay, well, that's fair. That's okay. That's fine.
Yes, sir. As far as
there's not a monolith,
the political landscape right now, I mean, I don't think that enough is getting done for anyone to 100% endorse either political team, I will say. I won't say political person, but either team. You have things that are going on that are good in the Republican side, and you have a lot of stuff that's going on that's not good. You've got things going on the Democratic side that are good and things that aren't good. Like, you know, we're about 50-50 in the.
I mean, you're being sketchy about that. So a lot of people are saying we're actually looking at Project 2025. We're seeing that this is just a culmination of years of politicalization in this country from the right, and that I don't see anything good coming from the right, coming from that project or anything that they've been proposing in the last 60 years.
Yes, sir. I haven't seen any Republican leaders promoting Project 2025 specifically.
No, because we're talking about it now.
Explicitly. That didn't stop them from talking about abortion. They lost a lot of votes.
Yeah, they don't want to talk about that either, but they have talked about these issues. I'm sorry, I'm not trying to talk over you. We're just running out of time. We have heard them talk about replacing the federal government, dismantling some of these secretarial positions, Department of Education, Department of Energy. We've seen them talk about this for years and years and years. This Heritage Foundation come up with this 2025 project thing, and they've been in existence since 1973. These issues they've been trying to rally support for since before then. Jennifer in Spring Hill, you say what in the last few minutes?
Well, I just like to quickly say that it's money in elections, and both parties take it. They take it from special interest PAC funds, and you can see that the APAC has gone to both parties. And we have now that blockbuster thing about Trump getting $10 million from Egypt, whereas we get, you know, our government, our leaders are beholden to Israel. I mean, we need, the only party that doesn't take this money is the Green Party. So I recommend Jill Stein, and you should look at, she has a platform that Kamala doesn't have. We don't see any of these platforms, and yet people are 100% behind them. So I think people really ought to look at opensecrets.org.
Well, you did that to yourself. I didn't turn you off, but we are running out of time. That is my show for today here on WNF Radio 88.5 FM. My name is Patro Mobili, host of Community Speaks. It's always wonderful to speak with the community every week. Jennifer, thank you for that. We'll talk more about the underparty, the underdogs. So, you know, it's not that I have anything against the minor parties. They need to have their space as well to talk about the issues that animate them. Is there any support for it in the country? But we have to remember the third party universe has a lot of parties in it as well that have been overlooked in local elections and in national elections, and it's done every time. And yeah, following the money is an important thing to do, but there are a lot of people who are just everyday ordinary people contributing because they want to see a new way in this country, not going backwards. And that's too much going backwards in this country. And like Kamala Harris says, we're not going back. And there's a lot of judgment calls to be made in every election. Whether you take Russian support is a judgment call issue for me. And I think the Greens have been just as guilty of that, getting disinformation or using Russian talking points. And that's a red flag for me. But that's my show. That's my time. Got to get on out and make room for Blandon Whalen and get back to the music with It's the Music Monday. And we'll keep you updated on all of the hurricane-related issues. But keep it tuned right here, WMNF